All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Harbor Community Meeting. This is the United States version. It's the 8th of April, and as always, it's a recorded meeting, so please adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. I have a relatively short agenda today, so let's go through it really quickly. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you all can see this. So we're making excellent progress towards the Harbor 2.0. Right now, I think we have about 50 bugs left, and there's a couple more bug bashes left by the team. But essentially, there is, if anybody's looking to try it out, there's a release candidate and can give you access. It's right there on the Harbor Community Meeting notes. So it's the second item. So if you're interested in trying out Harbor, go ahead and download the link, check it out, file some bugs, or come and fix some bugs, help us write docs. We love any type of effort from the community. I forgot to mention we have a new community meeting notes and agenda. No more presentations. All our agenda is going to be on this Harbor Wiki. So you can visit it. We'll have all the historical context. But we also added links up at the top to the old community details page and the old recordings that we used to have. Second, Harbor 2.1 planning is happening right now. That means we're looking into a couple of the features that we're going to introduce in 2.1. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. Proxy cache is the #1 feature, and then non-blocking garbage collection is the #2 feature. So we're looking at both of them. You can view this pull request here to kind of look at the proposal on some of these items. In addition to that, in the earlier community meeting, and you'll be able to view that on YouTube at any point within the next week or so, we had ZiMing basically showed us a step-by-step guide for deploying Harbor to a local kind cluster using the operator that we have developed. Well, mostly OVH Cloud developed it, but the Harbor team has been contributing to it significantly since then. I'm going to skip the last item there because I want to show it in a second. The other thing, and maybe this is worthwhile adding to the agenda, Jonas, if you want to add that, that'd be great as well. I'll put it here on the chat so you can edit it as well. But we've been going through the CNCF SIG-Security assessment. This is an assessment of Harbor, and it's fit for graduation from a lens of security. This is a huge document. It has a ton of content, and it's very important for also practitioners of Harbor. And I'm going to take you to a couple of very important items here. There's this under operations and system design, you're going to find a lot of things around, how Harbor is architected, the different options that we made, and the different requests. And you see a lot of comments here, like the security architects are looking into Harbor. They probably posted 200-300 questions so far, and we're just going through them and answering them both here in Slack, on private messages. And this table, which is the breakdown of access tokens and creds, is super important to understand Harbor from a security standpoint. What are all the different pieces that Harbor interacts with from access tokens and encryption keys and how they connect to each other? So for example, if you want to learn how robot credentials are created, well, this is a JWT token with custom claims that's signed by the private key of Harbor. How is a private key of Harbor created? That's item #1. It's an EXO 509 certificate for the public key, and the private key is 496 bits. We generate during installation, and you can rotate it if you do XYZ. So this is from an operation standpoint. These are critical things that someone needs to understand on Harbor, and this table illustrates all the different pieces. For example, one new feature of Harbor 2.0, and I mentioned it probably about a month ago, is that we're going to enable SSL for Harbor core service to Harbor core service communication. So there are 7 such services. We're going to create a certificate for each one. It's going to be an X509 TLS certificate. So the customer has to provide it, but there's a way that you can replace it by replacing the CRT and .key in the designated paths. In Kubernetes, it's a secret, but in Docker Compose, it's going to be a file with restricted permissions. So super, super valuable. There's a lot of other things here that are valuable. I encourage anybody that's a practitioner of Harbor and interested in learning and understanding Harbor. It's great. We also have attacker motivations and what are the different threats from a security standpoint that Harbor has. So very valuable document to read. Any questions so far on that?
If you refresh the page now, it should be there.
Woohoo, look at that.
Boom.
Thank you, Jonas. And we've learned that anybody can update this. Actually, the reason why we went with GitHub is because certain countries, specifically China, HackMD did not work. So GitHub does work without SSL and without VPNs. So that basically offered a better choice for us. So the next thing I want to show is we have a document. Actually, I need to link to the right things right here. That basically talks about the integration between the different between Harbor and the different peer-to-peer providers. That's basically we should add that. I don't know why we didn't add it to the notes earlier. I just sent it to you right now, Jonas. Maybe you can add it now too. But this basically talks about the architecture of enabling Harbor to operate with peer-to-peer technologies like Kraken and Dragonfly, and how we're going to enable pushing images to these different architectures. If it's too long and you don't want to read, let me kind of tell you the two main things of this. Number one is we're going to operate on a provider model. So every time you want to enable a new provider for P2P, whether it's Dragonfly or Kraken or even something else, you add them into Harbor, you provide a URL, possibly some set of credentials, and they connect to Harbor. Once they're connected, they almost behave the same way as replication providers. So if you're familiar with replication providers, and I'm logging in right now on my UI, you'll notice that if we want to enable replication, the first thing, if you try to create a rule, the first thing you need is an endpoint, right? So there's no endpoints here. So let me go ahead and create an endpoint. So if I create an endpoint, I give it a name, a description, a URL, and then I give it an access ID and secret. And that's how you connect to an external registry. Same way that will connect to an external provider that's a P2P provider. So it's not going to have any difference. So let's go ahead and look at that in a quick demo. So here, Stephen Zhou, one of our maintainers, was going through this. You'll notice, oh, why did it start from the beginning again? It's a minute 26. Sorry, guys. My apologies. It lost my my slot. There you go. So over here, one of the things that Stephen is showing you is that under distributions, and that's going to move under administration eventually, you have instances, which is the same thing as the endpoints for registry replication that we used to have before. And then there you can basically add the different providers that you're going to have. So he's actually going to go through and create a provider right now. So look at the instances and look at this. This UI is very similar to adding a replication target. You tell us what provider you want, you give it a name, you give it an endpoint, and then if there is authentication behind it, you enable that. And then once you enable it, it will basically be able to accept preheating images. So how do you preheat an image? Today, because this is a prototype and it's a work in progress, you basically come and find an artifact in Harbor and you click the preheat button. And once you do that, that artifact will be pushed to the peer-to-peer core service, and then the peer-to-peer network will push it to the different areas where, based on policy, where it needs to be distributed. In the history tab, we will show you exactly the history, like this image was preheated or this image wasn't preheated, and so on and so forth. But we don't, so this is where the history is shown. However, we don't want to stop there. We want to enable preheating the same way that we enable replication today. So in replication today, we give you a lot more freedom in terms of how can you replicate an asset in Harbor. So if we actually go back to replications, we allow you to provide some filtering or by tag, by label, and the resource won't really matter that much after Harbor 2.0, but we give you a little bit more flexibility into deciding, what resources do you want to replicate and where should they go? And the same way and the same policy and the same flexibility in terms of defining this logical namespace that you want to preheat with peer-to-peer is also going to happen. So look for that. Our goal is to have maybe possibly a minimal viable product for peer-to-peer integration with Harbor 2.1 and finalize it before KubeCon EMEA, which is in mid-August. So that's kind of where we are. Any questions? Tianon, you're our main guest here. Everybody else is, he knows all these things. So hopefully these things are interesting and are valuable. I think, 2.1 with the focus on edge, we're going to make introducing this integration between Dragonfly and Kraken is going to be important, and hopefully everybody finds it interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely very interesting. We've had similar conversations about how to implement this in Harbor ourselves. So it's really cool to hear you talking about it.
Yeah, if you want, if you're interested in looking into this or even contributing a little bit, just shoot me a message on Slack. I'll put you in contact with the guys that are on the working group. And at the very least, if you want to at least give them requirements, the document is on the community meeting notes. So read that and post your feedback. And if you want to get more involved, obviously, we'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'm reading the document now, and I just found the link to the GitHub issue. I was curious on, so this is implementing the ability to integrate Harbor with Dragonfly and Kraken. Does that mean those will be part of the deployment of Harbor, or will those still be deployed separately?
I think we're very hesitant on pushing everything in tree in Harbor, so we want to make it as a pluggable model where there's an interface, they implement it, and you bring them along just like we did with scanners. So I don't think they will be part of the core product, at least not initially, but they will be fully supported by Harbor since we're testing with them as well. It's just they're going to be out of tree extensions. And when I say out of tree, meaning out of the core Harbor repo, right? There's going to be a repo in the Harbor namespace that basically will have that work. It's just not going to be main Harbor.
Right. Then you don't have to choose which of Dragonfly and Kraken you think is better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, this is really interesting. I'll definitely be reading this more and probably circulating it.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Cool. That's all the stuff that I had for today. Jonas, Kenny, anything from you guys?
No, I've said this before. I am super excited as well to see the P2P work taking shape here. I think it's a fantastic add-on, additional functionality here to Harbor. So yeah, super excited for that.
Excellent. And did you hear about the new capability of Harbor? We're going to be able to host music on Harbor and movies. And, imagine if someone added a hack and created a movie format that's OCI compliant, started pushing it in Harbor and then using P2P to throw it everywhere.
Are you saying that Harbor is just a new instantiation of like Emule or something like that?
Yeah. We're going to become the new Napster.
I think we just created our next year's April 1st joke.
That'd be, we should do that.
I don't think it's a joke at all. In the OCI discussions around the artifact specification, we've literally been throwing around the idea that this is the next generation of S3, which honestly, I think the distribution protocol is kind of a garbage S3 replacement. If you were setting out to build a replacement for S3, this isn't where you'd end up. But it's kind of funny that we brought the whole container ecosystem back to, well, this is just a thing that stores things, so let's just let it store anything.
Yeah. Buckets.
Yep.
Cool. All right. I'll give everybody back 10 minutes then. Thank you, Tianon, for attending. Thank you all, and see you all in a couple of weeks.
All right.
Bye, everybody.